The second half of Season 1 of Owl House is finally here, and though it's been like pulling feathers to get Luzs some dang spell training, Episode 12 finally delivered on some long-awaited story points. I'm Whitney Van Laningham, and today we're breaking down the Owl House Episode 12, Adventures in the Elements. Before we get started, I want to thank our super nerd sponsor of the day, Charles Sheed, for supporting us on Patreon. Also, thank you so much to all of our fans for getting us to 400,000 subscribers. We couldn't do Nerdwire without you all, and we're so stoked to share this huge milestone with you. Now on to the Owl House. This video is spoiler heavy, homies, so make sure you're all caught up on the Owl House before you watch it. There are spoilers, you've been warned, yeehaw. Luzs is more excited than ever this episode to learn about Hexside School of Magic and Demonics, because she's finally about to become a new student. In addition to being the alma mater of Ida and her sister Lilith, Hexside is a pretty badass origin story. Hexside was built on the bones of its rival school after an epic conquering. That's so metal. Personally, I hope we get to see more of the school's lore going forward. That rival school had to rebuild somewhere. Maybe they'll have to face off against them in a Grudgeby match. Go Banshees! A couple episodes ago in Something Ventured, Something Framed, Luzs was once again fed up with Ida's aversion to teaching her real spells. Despite constantly touting how awesome the Bad Girl Coven is, and having inarguably rad membership t-shirts, the BGC hasn't made any real moves towards teaching Luzs to become a witch. From Ida's perspective, she wants to teach Luzs to think for herself, and she knows that the restrictions placed upon her at Hexside will only stifle her bad girl potential. Why join a coven and lose your freedom when you could harness all the magic on the Boiling Isles and make your own choices? But another part of her knows that it's not fair to hold Luzs back from something she's truly interested in. At Hexside, Luzs will have formal training and a whole school full of new friends her own age to hang out with. And of course, Luzs promises to still learn Bad Girl Coven magic on the side, but honestly, I'm kind of on Luz's side here about wanting to go to magic school. We're half a season in and Luzs has barely learned anything about magic. I want to see her overcome her human obstacles to become one of the most powerful witches of the Boiling Isles. She's already shown so much potential, from animating the Owl House during the Midnight Conjuring, to teaching herself how to cast a light spell by drawing it out and bringing it to life. Despite not having a sack of magic bile attached to her heart like most witches, Luzs has sheer determination and willpower driving her magic abilities. If this is what she can do with minimal, obtuse lessons from Ida, I want to see what she can do with some proper training. To do such proper training, Ida takes Luzs to the knee of the Boiling Isles. At the knee, we meet yet another awesome, terrifying, cuddly monster to add to our ever-growing index of beasts on the Boiling Isles. The slitherbeast is an abominable snow creature that lives in the snowy forest and apparently doesn't like being bombarded with magic fire. In my opinion, this little guy looks like a mix between a wampa and a giant hungry puppy. It lives in a toothy-looking ice cave and uses its purple silly putty saliva to trap its victims. Obviously, like its Empire Strikes Back counterpart, it doesn't really get the concept of eating your food when you find it, so Luzs and Amity are able to save Ida, Edric, and Amira from being slitherbeast supper. Interestingly enough, we're also introduced to a brand new witch's tool for this series, Amity's training wand. We've all been so saturated in Harry Potter for the last 2 decades, I hadn't really considered a training wand to be a thing, but it actually kind of makes sense. Harry Potter did have toy wands for children, but basically once you turn 11, Ollivander just pats you on the back and is like, "Here's a powerful death tool, you 5th grader." Having a training wand just seems like a better idea here. And I'm excited to see what Amity can do now that her training wand is off and she's ready for her big girl wand. Even more important is that we see that Luzs can utilize this wand, meaning she might not be limited to drawing glyphs as the series continues. I'm wondering if Ida or Hexside will have Luzs craft her own wand by the end of the season. I could also totally see her being gifted a hand-me-down wand from either Ida or even Lilith. Free magic swag is a great way to create a wedge between Ida and her apprentice, and it might just be the trick to capturing the Owl Lady. But I might be getting ahead of myself there. The big moment in this episode is when Luzs finally learned her second spell. And we finally learn a little bit more about how a human like her is able to do this strange brand of hand-drawn magic. When Ida taught Luzs her first spell, how to conjure little balls of light out of thin air, she explained that although modern witches do have that magic bile duct attached to their hearts from which they draw their powers, ancient witches used to do magic differently long before their bodies made that adaptation. Hopefully we'll find out more about that later too, because I'm fascinated by witch biology. But for now, this bit of information points us to a bigger clue. Luzs can do magic regardless of her human status. If there was a way for pre-evolved witches to cast spells, Luzs can figure it out. And maybe her technique isn't exactly the way her long-lost witchy great-great-grandmothers used to do it, but it works. Without a wand, a staff, or even a magic super organ, Luzs manages to recreate Ida's complex spell casting by drawing out the spell's pattern and activating it by pressing its center. Whatever Luzs is doing certainly isn't anything like the magic her peers and mentors are capable of, but it seems like she's definitely tapped into some bad girl witch powers of her own. For inspiration in their training, Ida takes Luzs into the outdoors to help her connect to ancient magic. But despite the majestic setting and the feeling of closeness to aged power, Ida seems more focused on giving Luzs a nature lesson than teaching her any real spells. It's like, girl, we get it, we've tasted a snow cone before. Feeling frustrated, Luz's jealousy of Amity's more traditional training style and her hot-headed ambition causes her to steal Amity's training wand and spellbook. And while she does manage to cast a very impressive firework, it turns out Luzs still has a lot to learn about regular magic as well. Her second attempt summons the slitherbeast, and when Amity imprisons her in the snow for her own safety, Luzs finally has some time to really think about Ida's teachings. Like the light spell, it turns out that there's more than meets the eye to Ida's witch training. I mean, maybe not the part where she's just shoving moss up her nose. That's pretty much a what you see is what you get kind of deal. And although Luzs doesn't directly utilize her newfound skill in licking rocks, Ida's encouragement to connect to nature in the same way that the ancient witches did finally gets through to her. After sending a light glyph into the sky and seeing it reflected back to her in the stars, Luzs notices that the falling snowflakes also have a spell pattern within their design. She traces it onto the snow and blammo! A giant ice pillar shoots out of the ground. Now Luzs can do 2 spells, and although Ida and Amity helped point her in the right direction, both of them are technically self-taught spells. I don't know, man. Being able to draw your own spells into existence seems a lot more powerful than following a book and using a training wand. Has Amity Blight finally met her match at Hexside? My guess is that this isn't the last time we'll see Luzs teach herself a spell, but with her upcoming enrollment at Hexside, she may be learning in a new capacity for the time being. I wonder if Luzs will struggle to get traditional magic like the kind Amity, Willow, and Gus perform at school, or if her connection with nature will give her a boost beyond her classmates. At this point, I think it's fair to expect a little of both. I bet she'll struggle to fit in with her bad girl coven magic at first, but that ultimately her ability to make her own magic out of thin air will propel her forward in her studies. No pupil of Ida the Owl Ladies will get stuck in magic kindergarten, that's for sure. Now that Luzs has mastered conjuring light and controlling ice, I wonder what her next spell will be. It has to be something with nature, right? So, not to sound like too Avatar-y, but I wonder if we'll see her learn to perform magic with other elements like water, fire, earth, or air. Obviously, the Owl House version of these things would probably be like enchanting the boiling rain to be a normal temperature, or the power to make Willow's plants come to life, but you get where I'm going with this, right? I think we'll have to see Luzs learn to use the topography of the Boiling Isles to help her discover new spells. There's a reason why Ida made a big deal of having Luzs stare out over the Isles during their training. My theory is that as we continue learning about the different parts of the island throughout the series, Luzs will have to keep drawing from the land to educate herself about her own special brand of magic. But besides the importance of respecting the world around you in accordance to magic, the other huge factor in a successful witching career seems to be the people around you. In this episode, that means Amity and Ida, the 2 witches who taught Luzs a thing or two about casting spells and raising hell. I love that we're finally getting to explore Luzs and Amity's friendship as a possibility in this series. It's refreshing to see the Draco Malfoy bully trope retiring early on in the story, and I want to continue to see Luzs and Amity show off their very different expertise in magic. Like most school bullies, Amity isn't really a mean person IRL. She's just as lost and anxious about the future as all of her classmates. The constant pressure she puts on herself to top her older twin siblings and be the best ever witch at Hexside really gets to her, and baby girl could really use the TLC that'll come with being co-president of the Azura Book Club. All we really have to do next is wait and see how Willow and Gus take to Amity and Luz's new friendship. Something tells me that new friend group is going to take a little getting used to for all parties involved. Luz's relationship with Ida had some of its biggest growth ever in this episode as well. I was getting frustrated right alongside Luzs that Ida wouldn't just sit her down and teach her a proper spell already. Like seriously, it took a cracked phone screen, 2 near-death experiences, and a bat symbol-esque constellation projection just to teach her 2 spells. You really can't just sit her down and show her a few abracadabras? Why? We know that Ida and King can often be incredibly lazy. Sometimes it feels like they only promise to teach Luzs magic and demonology just to gain another unpaid intern around the house. And because the Owl Lady is so lawless herself, there's no real structured environment for Luzs to learn in. Say what you want about muggles in human schools, but there's a reason why we give kids schedules and rules. It's to help them learn. Luz's chaotic home life and her mentor's occasional ambivalence to her teaching aren't exactly conducive study zones, so it's hard to side with the Owl Lady after multiple rejected requests to teach Luzs magic properly. But this episode really turned my lackluster feelings towards Ida's teaching methods around for me. Although she's clearly a very unorthodox mentor, her seemingly useless tidbits of advice always pull through for Luzs. For example, there is that time that Ida told Luzs to carry around that glob of junk in her pocket, and it turned out to be a seed that Willow could use to defeat the rogue abominations at Hexside. That was super helpful. Kinda gross, but super helpful. And although I was totally team WTF when it came to Ida's lessons on tasting snow, I gotta hand it to her. Paying close attention to those snowflakes is what saved all 4 of their lives, and it wouldn't have happened if the Owl Lady hadn't shared some of her weird random wisdom. I'm excited to see how Amity, Ida, and the rest of the gang encourage Luzs to learn more powerful witchy magic, but I want to know what you guys think is going to happen next in the comments. How will Luzs learn her next spell? What kind of spells will she master next? Let me know in the comments below, like and subscribe to Nerdwire, and always let an ice pillar blast you home.